Thank you. Before I had kids, I had it all figured out. I was the best parent in the world. Color-coded calendar schedules so the kids don't miss the activities. Emotionally intelligent responses when the kids act up. Firm but loving boundaries so the kids grow up in the right environment. In fact, if there was ever a Nobel Prize given for theoretical parenting, I would be on top of that list. And then I had actual kids, and on day one, my beautiful plan was met with a screaming, irrational, sleep-deprived reality that didn't care anything about my spreadsheet. And by the way, no one told me that when you have kids, you don't just lose sleep, you change time zones. You move permanently to something I now call BST, Baby Standard Time, where nothing runs on your schedule and everything is urgent and all about the baby. That was my first real lesson in being human. Because being human is not when you have all the perfect answers. It is what you do when the answers you've planned for no longer works. And I think that's where many of us are today. Maybe not just as parents, but as leaders, as professionals, as people trying to make sense of a world changing faster than our instincts can catch up. You see, for most of our lives, success followed a very simple formula. Learn more, know more, and be right. And sincerely, that contract made sense because knowledge was scarce, progress was predictable, and if you had the answer, you had the power. But in this new age today, something has changed. Answers are everywhere. Confidence is automated. Expertise expires faster than you know it. I mean, you can just type in any complex question into a generative AI tool like ChatGPT, and it spits out answers instantly. So the question is no longer, how do we get more answers? It is, what makes us valuable when answers become cheap and abundant? So here's the idea I want to leave you with today. In a world where artificial intelligence generates answers instantly, your value is no longer tied to how often you're right. It is now tied to how fast you're willing to let go of being right and how human you're willing to become in the process. Because becoming human is not performing certainty. It is practicing judgment. It is not protecting identity. It is staying curious. And it is definitely not trying to be the smartest in the room. It is helping the room to think better. I know that shift sounds subtle, right? But it's not. Because it changes how we think, how we lead, how we parent, how we show up. It changes how we show up in these rooms. I've lived and learned this the hard way, 3 times in fact. 3 different careers across different geographies. I started my career as a clinician. And in that world, being right was not optional. Precision mattered, rightfully so because lives depended on it. So my identity was tied to correctness and accuracy. Then I became a tech startup founder, and suddenly, those same instincts that helped me succeed as a clinician made me slower as a founder. Because in a startup ecosystem, the goal wasn't to be right. The goal was to learn fast. Progress came from challenging assumptions, killing bad ideas, and moving on. The faster we're able to let go of certainty, the faster we're able to survive. It was such an uncomfortable lesson to learn, and I thought I'd learned it all. Then came the third transition. Today, I advise leaders making billion-dollar high-stake decisions, usually with messy and incomplete data, and increasingly now with artificial intelligence conversations in the room. Earlier on, walking into these rooms, those old instincts of wanting to narrow the uncertainty and land the conclusion always kick in, because that's what a smart consultant would do, right? I remember this particular meeting. I was making this presentation to this board of executives, and one of them asked me, can you walk us through why you think our enterprise value is dropping and what you think we're missing? You know those questions that require very direct answers? I can see those old reflexes kicking in, wanting me to frame the conclusion and sound very certain. And I almost gave in to that. Only this time, I did something different. I paused. And then I responded with something I had been trained my entire career to avoid. I said these 4 powerful words. I don't know yet. As if that wasn't uncomfortable enough, I named what we didn't know, what the model couldn't support, where the data might be wrong, and some of the things we need to take a second look at before we decide. And the most unexpected thing happened. The entire room changed. They stopped asking me for answers, and they started thinking with me. People spoke up earlier. Trade-offs became clearer. Assumptions surfaced faster. And suddenly, the quality of the decisions in the room got better. Not because we had more certainty, but because we had better judgment. And it was at this point something powerful struck me, that the skill set that made you successful in one environment can quietly make you relevant in the next. And for many of us right now, we are carrying the wrong skill set into this new age. And it's because we still think intelligence is about having the answers and protecting the answers at all costs. But in a world where machines generate answers, the human value has shifted. Intelligence is no longer just about producing the answers, it's about questioning them. It's no longer about speed, it's about meaning. Now, see how many of us still show up. I would say, don't get me wrong at all. Artificial intelligence has come to change how we live, how we play, and how we work forever. It is producing information at remarkable rates, even if sometimes that information is hallucination. It can predict data, it can capture trends in interesting ways, but it still cannot decide what matters. It still lacks the trust, the ethics, the empathy needed in quality decision-making. It cannot carry a crying baby and know that what that baby needs is not efficiency but presence. It cannot sit in a difficult room and sense that the most important truth hasn't been spoken. All of that work still belongs to us. That's the human edge, and that's the part we need to get remarkably good at going forward. But look at how many of us still show up at life, at work, at play, trying to optimize for these old signals of sounding certain, getting our expertise. No wonder it feels like a very heavy burden to carry, because we are trying to win on metrics that the world no longer rewards. So what do? We need to make 3 choices. 3 simple, maybe difficult, but deeply human choices. The first choice we need to make is to choose presence over performance. Not everything needs to be optimized. Some things need to be felt. For example, when my child says, "Dad, watch this," it doesn't mean I glance over what he's saying for a few seconds while I continue to send an email on my phone. It means see me, choose me, and be here, because presence is not passive. It's a conscious decision, and it does something else. It builds trust, because people tend to trust those who make them feel seen before they solve them. At work, it could be as simple as you closing your laptop when you have a one-on-one conversation, taking time to listen in, asking additional questions, instead of rushing to give an advice or summary recap, because sometimes what moves the room is not the best response. It's that feeling of being heard. And when you feel heard and seen, trust follows. And in this age of artificial intelligence, trust is a strategic advantage. The second choice we need to make is to choose judgment over speed. AI can tell you what will likely happen, but only a human should decide what should happen. Because, come to think of it, some of the most critical decisions we make in life, they are rarely just analytical. They are relational, they are contextual, they are ethical, and that's why judgment has become a key virtue going forward. One of the ways I try to encourage my team to sharpen their judgment skills is to say my 4 powerful words and say it often. I don't know yet. You know what? How about we try it in the room? On the count of 1, 2, let's say I don't know yet together. 1, 2, go. I don't know. Beautiful. I don't know yet. Begin to introduce that in the rooms you find yourself and see how the quality of the conversations in those rooms grow. Say it not as a sign of weakness, but as a sign of responsibility that helps the room to think better. Because the future does not belong to those who generate the fastest answer. It belongs to those who exercise the best judgment. The third choice we need to make is to choose questions over certainty. Instead of rushing to say things like, here's the conclusion. Why don't you try this instead? What are we missing? What are we assuming? What should we take a second look at before we decide? Because answers close thinking, but questions widen the room, expose assumptions, and make better judgments possible. And in this next era, your value will increasingly come from the quality of questions you bring to the room. So, here's the paradox of this moment. The more powerful our machines become, the more valuable our humanity gets. Because empathy then becomes rarer, presence becomes premium, and judgment becomes revolutionary. You see, there was a time when being the smartest person in the room kept you safe. This is not that time. That time is long gone. Because being human now means staying curious when others are rushing to conclusion. Being adaptable when the definitions of value is changing. And being courageous enough to let go of what once made you successful so you don't spend your future protecting a version of yourself the world no longer needs. You're no longer needed for just producing answers. You are needed for your better judgments, for your presence, and the courage to rethink. Remember BST, Baby Standard Time? That time zone where nothing ran on my schedule and everything was urgent and all about the baby? Well, turns out I've changed time zones again. And so have you. Let me make welcome your new time zone, HST, Human Standard Time, where what counts is not being right, but being real, and what matters is not the answers you bring to the room, but the humanity you bring with it. So for one very last time, how human are you willing to become? Because in this moment, in this very moment, maybe the smartest person in this room is not the one with the strongest answer, but the one most willing to stop trying to be. Thank you.